Problem number 1 asks us to solve this equation here. What we have is 7 times x is equal to 4. So 7x's is equal to 4. So what we're going to do is, to isolate x, we need to back out what we've done to it. And what have we done to it? We've multiplied it by 7. So to undo a multiplication, we will use a division. So here's our plan. We're going to divide by 7. Division is the opposite of multiplication. So let's do that. This is going to give us, I'm going to divide both sides by 7. And 7 into 7 is 1, so I get 1x equals 4 over 7, or just simply x equals 4 over 7. And we've got it solved. Problem number 2 is going to work pretty much the same way. You can see what we're doing. We're multiplying m by 18, so to undo this multiplication, we're going to divide. So here's our plan. We're going to divide by 18, so let's do that. Divide by 18 on both sides. We'll get 18m divided by 18 is equal to 13 over 18. And on the left side here, 18 divided by 18 is just 1, so we're left with 1m. You might even want to say that those 18s cancel. Some people say that. It's really a division. 18 into 18 is 1, so we get 1m equals 13 over 18. Let's move on to number 3. We've got 8 times z is equal to negative 72. So we've got a multiplication over here. To undo the multiplication, we'll use division, right? Division will undo a multiplication. So our plan is to divide by 8. And doing so will look like this. 8z over 8 equals negative 72 over 8. And these 8's, will cancel or divide out. And then we're left with z is equal to, now, let's look at this. We have a negative divided by a positive, so the result is going to be negative. And 8 into 72 will go, how many times? 9 times. So z is equal to negative 9, and that equation is solved. And in number 4, again, we've got a multiplication. We're multiplying x by negative 9, so let's undo the multiplication with the division. So we are going to, of course, divide by negative 9, and that will give us, here's what it looks like. Negative 9x over negative 9 equals 72 over negative 9, and negative 9 divides into negative 9 once, so we're just left with an x. That was the whole point. And on the right side, positive divided by negative is negative, and 72 divided by 9 will go into 72 8 times. So x is equal to negative 8. And in number 5, again, we've got a multiplication. We've got 6 times t is equal to negative 40, so we're going to divide by 6. Let's just go ahead and do it. I'm not going to write down divide by 6 this time. We're going to divide by 6. Now, here's what I'm going to do. If I divide this side by 6, 6 into 6 is just 1. So we're going to be left with just a t over here. And this is going to be negative 40 over 6, which we can reduce. Both those are even, so negative divided by positive is negative. Now, if I divide each one of these by 2, I'll get a 20 on the top and a 3 on the bottom. And there we have it. T is equal to negative 20/3. Our equation is solved. Number 6. Again, we've got a multiplication equaling a number. Let's divide both sides by negative 11. So doing so will give us, I'll write it out this time. I'm going to divide that side by negative 11, this side by negative 11, and negative 11 into negative 11 is 1. So on the left side, we're just left with x equals, now on the right side, negative divided by negative is positive. 11 will go into 77 7 times. So there's our solution. X is 7. Now, look at number 7 here. There's a couple ways we can do this one. First of all, we see a division, a multiplication. So we can undo this multiplication with a division. So I'll write that out this time. What we're going to do, here's one way to do this. We could divide by 3. Now, if we do that, it's going to look like this. 3m over 3 equals 0 divided by 3. 3 into 3 will cancel, goes one time. So we're just left with m on the left side, and, now careful here, 0 divided by 3 is 0. You can have 0 in the numerator, but not the denominator. That would be undefined. So 0 divided by a non-zero number is 0. Now, that's one way to do this problem. Here's another way. This is called a zero factor property. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the zero factor property. Now, a factor is part of a multiplication. And the zero factor property says this. If you have a multiplication like a number a times a number b and it's equals 0, then here's what has to happen. A has to be 0, or b has to be 0, or both. A and b equals 0. Right? So if you multiply two numbers together and you get 0, one of them has to be 0. So if we look back up here, that's what we've got, right? We're multiplying two numbers together and we're getting 0. So one of these has to be 0. 3 and m, one of those has to be 0, and it's not the 3. So the only way this can be true by the zero factor property is for m to be 0. So we did it two ways. First of all, we used we just divided both sides and realizing that 0 divided by non-zero is 0. And the second approach, we just use the zero factor property, which says you multiply two numbers together and you get 0. One of them's got to be 0, and it's not the 3, so it's got to be the m. Number 8 says we've got the opposite of the z being 30. Now you could think of this as this right here. Negative 1z, we just don't write the 1s, equals 30. And now you've got a multiplication, right? Negative 1 times z is 30. So we're going to do, divide by negative 1, and that's going to look like this now. We'll write it out. Negative 1z over negative 1 equals 30 over negative 1. And the negative 1 into negative 1 is once. So on the left side, we're going to get z equals, on the right side, positive divided by negative is negative, and 30 divided by 1 is 30. Now, here's what we could have done, right? So we have that solution. Now, here's what we could have done. How about if we try this? Let's get rid of all that. What if we did this? We know that negative z is equal to 30. So in our head, we just divide by negative 1. And if I just divide, okay, so I'm still going to do this. This is what's in my head. Divide by negative 1. And if I do that, I know that negative 1 divided by negative 1 is just 1. So on the left side, we're just going to get a z here. And I know that 30 divided by negative 1 is negative 30. So I could have shown all that work, or more simply, I can just show this right here, and I've got the solution a little bit more quickly. In number 9, we're going to write negative x is equal to negative 4/5. So I know there's really a 1 here, right? Negative 1x equals negative 4/5. So let's divide by negative 1. Now I'm just going to do it here. I'll get x equals, now, what do you get over here? Negative 4/5 divided by negative 1. Let's write it out. Here's what it's going to look like, right? Negative 4/5 divided by negative 1. Well, negative over negative is positive. And now I'm just dividing by 1. So what we're going to get here is that x is equal to positive 4/5. On to 10. What we've got in 10 is, well, you can think of it as a division, right? It's a multiplication, really, 1/6 times x. But I can think of this as a division looking like this. X over 6 equals negative 9. And the way I'm going to approach this is, get rid of that line, is I'm going to multiply by 6. So if I multiply both these sides by 6, it's going to look like this. You know, I'll use this. it'll be 6 times 1 over 6x equals 6 times negative 9. These 6's cancel. I'm just left with x equals positive times negative is negative. 9 times 6, 54. And our equation is solved. Problem number 7, we've got a division here. I've got x divided by 3. I'm going to undo that division with a multiplication. So my plan is to do this. I'm going to multiply by 3. Now it's going to look like this. It'll be 3 times x over 3 equals 3 times 7. These 3's are going to cancel, or 3 into 3 is 1, so I get 1x. So on the left side I just get x equals 21, and this little equation is solved. Let's just check it. What do you get here if you take 21 and go all the way back to the beginning and put it into x? 21 divided by 3, sure enough, is 7. We've got it right. We got another division here. I've got x, my variable, divided by 9, equaling negative 9. So we've got a division. Let's undo the division with a multiplication. So we're going to multiply by 9. Now, let's just do this. On this left side, if we multiply by 9, those 9's will cancel. So we're just going to be left with x. That's the whole reason we do it. And then 9 times negative 9, negative 81, right? Do you see it? 9 times negative 9, negative 81. 9 up here, those 9's cancel. 9 times negative 9, negative 81. And this equation is solved.